7 years after the critically acclaimed Monster Hunter World, comes Capcom's latest entry in its mega hit series, Monster Hunter Wilds. As a longtime fan of Monster Hunter, I have been extremely excited to see what the team has cooked up for us this time. And so, after having received a review code from Capcom and having played it for 40 hours and having finished the story, I can now share my thoughts with you in this review. Have the lads done it again? Is it truly another evolution of this 20-year-old series? Let's find out. After a young boy is discovered in the Forbidden Lands, a place thought to be uninhabited for a millennium, the Hunters Guild mobilizes a large expedition to investigate the elusive area. The player takes on the role of a hunter participating in this mission, whose goals are to reunite the boy Nata with his people and research the Forbidden Lands and the monster known as the White Wraith, which is said to have destroyed Nata's home. As far as story hooks go, this is a pretty solid one, and I'm pleased to say that the game executes on it very well. Wilds puts a lot of effort and focus on its story, and as a result, I ended up being thoroughly engaged for the entire ride. It achieves this by being intensely character-focused compared to previous entries. Alma, Gemma, and especially Nata all get ample time to shine, and I walked away from the story being very attached to all of them. This is my gang. It helps that you can actually talk to them, having branching dialogues with each of your teammates, with more conversations unlocking as you progress through the game. The story also puts your player character into an interesting position, starting the game as an already established veteran hunter rather than as a greenhorn, which means that you take on a mentor-like role towards the young Nata. Despite the protagonist being voiced this time around, the game's writing does a great job at not giving your character too much established backstory and personality, so you can still roleplay and headcanon without too much conflict. I was also really impressed with the pacing of the story, which whisks you from place to place fast enough to never get boring, but not so fast that it overwhelms you. It was an extremely pleasant experience. But maybe most impressively, Monster Hunter Wilds' story has some real thematic substance to it, negotiating the dichotomy between merely surviving and truly living, and I found myself thinking about its various implications well after the credits rolled. And, without spoiling anything, the story takes some of the wildest turns in the entire series. As you know, I am a big lore guy, and some of the stuff later on in the story had my jaw on the floor. The basic gameplay loop of Monster Hunter is so rock solid and famous that it basically needs no introduction at this point. 14 weapon classes, hunt monsters, make hats from their spines, use hats to fight bigger monsters. You know the drill. The series has iterated and built on this concept with each new game, and Wilds' take on it might be my favorite yet. Combat is fluid but weighty. If I had to describe it, I'd say it's a smidge faster than Monster Hunter World, but noticeably more deliberate and methodical than in Monster Hunter Rise. The weapons I played, Sword and Shield and Hammer, also felt more responsive than they did in the recent public beta for the game, though that might also just have been a result of the game running better on average in the full release. On top of this basic iteration of the combat system, Monster Hunter Wilds adds 2 new mechanics into the mix. Focus Mode, which allows you to aim your attacks and destroy wounded weak spots on the monster for massive damage, and Weapon Switching, which allows you to switch between 2 different weapons mid-combat. Focus Mode is, frankly, one of my favorite ideas the team has ever introduced. It slots into the flow of combat seamlessly, as entering it for quickly scanning and exploiting wounds feels quite natural and intuitive. It also made me a better hunter indirectly. While the open wounds that the focus mode can target are highlighted by red scout flies, the white scratches that indicate that a wound is about to form are not. So in order to know where to attack efficiently, I got into a habit of closely observing the monster's skin and body, and in doing so learned their movesets more naturally than I ever did in previous games, which felt incredibly satisfying. Speaking of satisfying, actually destroying an open wound using focus strikes, which are attacks exclusive to focus mode, feels incredible. There's so much oomph behind it. By comparison, weapon switching is much less impactful on combat, which really surprised me. It's not useless by any means, and I did frequently switch to my hammer for those meaty wake-up hits whenever my target dared to go for a nap. But overall, I guess I expected the ability to wield two weapons to change the way I play more than it ended up doing. But it does allow for an insane variety in builds, and I cannot wait to see what players way better than me come up with. All of these mechanics coalesce into a combat experience that feels exhilarating, yet mindful, like a skilled dance between two masters of battle. I specifically had quite an interesting experience with the difficulty of the game. While hunts were on average somewhat shorter than in previous games, I'd spent that short time mostly fighting for my life. Battles feel tense and deadly, and it's, in my opinion, the best balance between ease of play and challenge we've seen in the series yet. Fighting Rei Dao in its nest during the Sand Tide has changed my brain chemistry forever, and is definitely one of the best experiences I've ever had with this series. And, if you couldn't tell already from my enthusiasm, this is without a doubt my favorite combat system out of any Monster Hunter game. I cannot overstate how much I love it. Combat is, of course, far from the only thing Monster Hunter has to offer, and this is especially true for Wilds. The real star here is the world and its ecosystems. The entire game space is open and seamlessly connected now, with no loading screens between maps and/or towns. This seamless world features vast, interconnected food chains of large and small monsters, each with their own ecology that is affected by the weather and changing seasons. Each habitat cycles through two seasons: the fallow, where resources are scarce and scavengers battle for scraps, and the plenty, where life blossoms in abundance. The switch between these two seasons is heralded by inclemencies, disruptive weather events that may take the form of thunderous sandstorms or torrential rainfall. Environments are transformed into dangerous hellscapes during these events, and the apex predators of the region are known to emerge under these conditions. Considering that I am the Monster Hunter nature documentary guy, I'm sure you can imagine that I am absolutely in love with this system. The detail and variety put into these worlds and their inhabitants is truly breathtaking, and with the return of the Ghillie Mantle and the addition of a photo mode, it's never been more fun to just stalk a monster and see what it gets up to. I cannot stress enough how amazing the density of life and interaction is in the various habitats, especially during the Plenty. The team absolutely knocked it out of the park with this one. But these worlds don't exist just to be looked at. This new seamless map design also changes how quests work. While you can still take curated quests from your handler or tent like in previous games, quests can also be created by targeting a monster out in the field. Finishing a quest also doesn't boot you back to camp, encouraging you to just spend time out in the wilds and hunt to your heart's content. The new Monster Pack mechanic is a welcome addition to add a bit more chaos into your hunts, even if I think that it is a little underutilized. Traversal across these vast fields is also very intuitive thanks to your Sacred, a rideable bird wyvern that allows you to zip across maps, navigate complex terrain, and even glide for short distances. The mere act of moving around is fun, and that's really valuable to me. Another highlight are the various villages the player can visit. Each one comes not just with a distinct population with interesting histories and customs to uncover, but they also often offer up unique services and game mechanics, which makes each town feel worth a visit. Another thing I was impressed by is the amount and quality of the content in the game. Monster Hunter Wilds has, in my opinion, what is possibly the best monster roster out of any base game we've had in the series, with an amazing array of foes that vary in shape, behavior, and game feel. But maybe most crucially, I liked fighting every single one. For the first time ever, this Monster Hunter game doesn't have a single monster I dislike fighting, which is nuts. Usually every game has at least a Plesioth or something. Moreover, Ray Dao is straight up my new favorite monster now, just an absolute home run of a design and fight. Armor and weapon designs are also absolutely excellent across the board, with the removal of gender-locked armor really giving you so much more freedom in how to style your hunter. The weapons are also all unique designs, no more iron and bone designs from Monster Hunter World. This is bolstered by a great deal of quest variety, as Monster Hunter Wilds features true RPG-style side quests, where a character will ask the player to do some task in exchange for some reward. While not all of these are bangers, some unlock really useful stuff, so they are very much worth doing. They also just help you get to know your environment and your people a little better. Features like these, and much more, make for a really beefy game experience that will have you playing way after the credits have rolled. If you've played any Monster Hunter game before, you know how strong the end and post-game sections can be, and Wilds is no exception. The game is also quite welcoming to newcomers. If turned on in the settings, the game offers a massive amount of tutorials and explanations for most of its mechanics, which can be read in a dedicated player guide whenever. The ability to SOS for either NPC helpers or actual players also makes getting stuck on a quest very unlikely. And since the NPCs that arrive to help are actual characters within the game's story, it also helps in building a bond with them even further. Various additional systems, such as optional armor and weapon recommendations from the smithy, are sure to help new players get acquainted with the intricacies of the hunt. As a quick aside, one thing that caught me off guard was that item management and resource gathering are actually quite relevant again. Because gathering is so easy and painless, and you get supplies for quests directly through your Sacred's pouch, I just figured I would never have to worry about consumable items, as that had been the case in World and Rise. But to my shock, I actually ran out of crafting materials and consumable tools multiple times throughout the story, which got me in trouble more than once. This culminated in me doing a capture quest only to realize that I had 0 tranq bombs anywhere, forcing me to take various detours to find sleep herbs and make some tranquilizers on the go to not just fail the quest. Monster Hunter Wilds punished me for my carelessness, and it felt amazing. My main criticism about the gameplay is how the season mechanic is handled early on. It takes a very long time before the player is actually able to engage with the dynamic ecosystems fully, which is an odd choice that makes the game's standout innovation weirdly absent from the early hours of the game. Once you do get to it, it's incredible, but it's a bit of a slow burn getting there. This is a direct consequence of the game's increased focus on story. While the narrative being told here is excellent, it is also quite linear at times, which I understand may not gel with everyone. It is worth noting that cutscenes are both skippable and pausable this time around, which is a very welcome addition. Lastly, let's chat a little about how the game looks, sounds, and runs. The good news is that the game did indeed run better on my PC than the beta did. I was able to lock the frame rate at 72 FPS at 1440p resolution with DLSS on quality mode without frame gen, and I didn't notice any major stutters personally. This will, however, heavily depend on your rig, so your mileage may vary. I really recommend just watching different reviews on this, because I'm just one perspective. For me, it ran fine. Visually, the game is mostly quite pretty. The Monster Hunter team's skill for art direction is near legendary, and it comes through in Wilds once again, with some truly beautiful environments and memorable character and especially monster designs. It is thus even more of a shame that some persistent graphical issues hold this artistic vision back at times. Much of the game looks quite grainy and fuzzy, regardless of which settings I tried, and it's most noticeable in dialogue scenes. This is exacerbated by the fact that a good chunk of the early game takes place during the season of fallow, where the world is grey and dull to signal the scarcity of life. While this is thematically appropriate, it also means that the game makes a fairly mixed first impression visually. It improves over time, absolutely, as you get to see more environments and seasons, but that first look at the game is not as visually striking as I think a first impression should be. What I do have endless praise for, however, is the sound design. From monster vocalizations to weapon impacts, everything is meaty and impactful, with some real fun soundscapes on some of the monsters. Also, Monster Hunter music has always been great, but they really knocked it out of the park this time. I need this soundtrack to be added to Spotify or something. Some of these tracks are life-changingly good. Monster Hunter Wilds is, frankly, incredible. The sheer level of detail in the world, the fantastic monster roster, the seamless and natural addition to the combat system, the wide array of customization options, the amazing story, I could go on. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, and I cannot wait to explore more of this beautiful world. While the more linear story might not be for everyone, and some graphical oddities definitely need a patch or two, none of that can change the fact that this is, very possibly, my new favorite game of all time, taking the spot that was previously reserved for Monster Hunter World. Whether you are a veteran of the series or someone looking to jump in for the first time, there has never been a better time to join the hunt. Thank you everyone for watching. Big thanks to Capcom for giving me an early review copy of the game. That was very appreciated. And of course, a big thank you to all of our patrons and channel members. Videos like these would literally not happen without any of you. I want to especially thank Theopuz, Lufish, Morgulblank, Tacti Wolf, Thyla Zero, Jacob Coleman, Hellbug Hunter, Shebo, M1Have12, Regal Eagle, Ronger97, Quali, MattHat124, My Name Gone, The Dollarfish, Sheba, King Dre, Ryan Hook, Veraxis, Thick, Kuroneko, Zion HV Augenson, Alistair, Jacob the Numbnut, Soruka, Sir Newt Newt, Evie, Rambling Robin, Hashi, Black Ace 202, Dissy, Habohimbro Mirror, Magenta, Russell, Vulgar Beast, Person 212, Claire Miboon, Oakwood Tree, Mr. Pyramid, Makot02, Geo, Nils Schlatter, Iron Camel, and Nah, I'm going to bed. Take care everyone, I'm gonna go take some cold medicine. Goodbye.